So
Hello.
Hello.
Catherine's about to say something.
I
Who
was.
are you?
It couldn't wait.
Okay.
Don't worry. I
Okay.
was going to ask you. So
I was
Warm.
fine with the temperature, and then all of a sudden, I don't know if it's being in with the light having no fan. I've all of a sudden just started
Started
feeling very warm.
perspiring.
Very warm. Hello,
Glowing.
friend. How are we all?
Uh-huh.
Looking at the comments and seeing this. This is a figure that I'm sure that people have, which certainly they've heard of, and I'm sure that there's going to be some things that are well known, and perhaps some that are more mythical. Shall I do the thing?
Yeah, do the thing.
Hi, friends. Welcome. It's Wednesday. Just gone 8:15. This is History After Dark. It is now, I'm looking out of my window, it is actually now dark at this time. Winter is coming. So we also call it this because on all of our other social medias, we are very demure, very classy. And we don't use any four-letter expletives unless you really annoy Philippa, in which case she will
Just
deal with your situation.
Yeah.
This is a place where we come to let our freak flags fly, where we do the swears, where we do the innuendos, where we just generally trade in filth and smut and other depravity. I think, therefore, it's clear what this may entail. If you are in an open plan office with a judgmental boss, put a headphone in. This is a way to get a disciplinary. If you're in a kitchen, a Lamborghini, a TARDIS with a small child. In my head, this child is called Timmy. Let's see the mug. Timmy is a problem. I haven't got the mug with me. Timmy is the kind of child. There you go. Merch. Who hears one depraved thing one time, locks it away in his mind palace, takes him to school with him. His teacher, who in my head is Miss Honey, then has this repeated to her. You have no knowledge that he even knows it. She, because she does not watch History After Dark, breaks the first cardinal rule of History After Dark, namely, if you don't know what it is, don't Google it. It's not for you. That's fine. Not everything is for everybody. So, therefore, she Googles it. She is now traumatized. She's in the fetal position, non-verbal in the corner, weeping. You've been called at school. Why does Timmy know what this is? And also, you now are on the hook for 12 weeks of therapy because teachers apparently need to be verbal, they say. So this is all very embarrassing. Put a headphone in. Alternatively, you can watch on the playback here on the YouTubes. It is always worth watching us live because on one occasion, you can see some of the evidence of that. We did say something that was unspeakably depraved that we had to yeet part of that footage directly into the sun's vapours. So that hasn't happened for a while. It means one of, I think, three things. Number one, we have got better. Very unlikely. Number two, we're due to kick off. And that's highly possible because at daycare pickup today, I said two wildly inappropriate things to my son's daycare worker that I'm not going to repeat. Because fortunately, she laughed and she did say that was funny because otherwise she could have called the social. Or three, we are so used to each other and friends like Julian. If you didn't see that last week, he is a vulgar boatman. He can come back. But we have essentially created this maelstrom of filth where things have become suitable and appropriate when they clearly aren't. In essence, the bar is now in hell. I think, therefore, it's very clear what's happening. If at any point I should see in the comments section over here, in any of our personal comment sections, something along the lines of, I really enjoy the history part of History After Dark, but I do wish you didn't have to swear so much. It's not very ladylike. First of all, fuck off. Second of all, you knew what you're getting. And third of all, we know what you're doing. We know that you want us to pin that comment so that people can come and humiliate you in the comments as a whole, because that is where your kink lives. You want ritual humiliation. And you know what, babe? Kinks are fine. I won't shame you. They will. But kink without consent is not the one. Look, I'm sure that if you wander down to Brighton Station, there are some fabulous basements, velvet clad, leather clad, some PVC clad. And in them, there are some Amazonian women called Clytemnestra who will, all of their clothes are wiped clean. And they will do things to you with a car battery, nipple clamps, and a butt plug that will make you question everything you ever knew in life. They will take a great fee for it, and they will be consenting. This is, I hope, a show for adults. Lucas, go to bed. So, we can't tell you what to do. However, we will never approve this as a drinking game. We are not responsible for your livers or your renal function. This will never be legal advice. Please do not sue. This is History After Dark. Let's talk about Sir Walter Raleigh.
Sir Walter, really. Here we are.
Really,
Water,
Raleigh?
really,
Really, Raleigh?
really, Raleigh. I think I might be allergic to alcohol. So, talking
Oh,
about
that's
drinking
really
game,
unlucky.
it's
Why?
really
What's happening?
unlucky. Well, I keep thinking I've got hay fever, but it's really random, except it's not random if I link it to when I've had a glass of beer, which isn't very often. So I can, like, it's not that often. So it's often, but anyway, so I can.
Is it
tell.
just
But yeah,
beer or is it any alcohol? Because if it's just beer, you'll just have to drink champagne instead.
I am going to do some experimentation,
Oh, how terrible for you.
and
How will you
For
cope?
science. For science.
it's all
Yes,
I'm going to
Kathleen
follow
said it
the
could be
scientific
wheat or
method,
gluten.
not the science, and yeah, give it a go. Find out. I think champagne is okay.
When just before I stopped drinking, I was getting a thing whereby however much alcohol I drank, whether I was absolutely rat-arsed or I just had one drink, I would get it, and it usually popped up above my eyebrows. The blood vessels would burst, and I'd get like a purple bruise whenever I
Ooh.
drank.
No,
It
that's
took me
the
months to
fight
stop
you got
drinking, which-
into.
That's
That's
the
the
fight.
fight you got into because you've been
Sometimes
drinking.
it was the fight I got into, or the prolific vomiting. But so at first I wrote it off. I'm like, oh, I've burst blood vessels from puking. My student days, my BA, it was a time. It was a time. It was a time where I got poorly planned tattoos and dated poorly planned men. But it didn't stop me drinking until I had a glass of wine one night, woke up the next day with these purple bruises, and I was like, "Ooh, this is
Yeah,
this is no good."
I get like my heart races as well. So red wine, someone said about that. But yes, it does that. Already knew about that. And then maybe it is sort of something to do with the wheat or gluten, because it's like hay fever. I start sneezing, which is a really bizarre. Have a glass of beer, start sneezing. So yeah, Cointreau champagne, love it. There's lots of really useful
Is that
suggestions.
because you're in a beer garden?
Well, I'm not always in a beer garden. I although I've been in the garden, I don't know. Maybe I'll, like when you have to keep a food diary, if you've got food sensitivities, I'll have to keep an alcohol diary.
Alcohol diary.
Honestly, I don't drink that much, but I would be gutted if I have some problem with beer, because I do love my beer. So
Could you just like weigh it up? Like, is it worth the sneezing?
The problem
yeah,
with
I suppose I could
allergies
just go in
is
for
they
it
get
anyway.
worse with each exposure.
Yeah,
That's
I think
the
that
problem
might be
with
what's
allergies.
happening.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's shit, isn't it?
Yes,
I'll have to
you've got to
just
be
get
careful.
onto Paul Roger and stock up on the champagne.
Do
What
a
else can you do?
little Calais booze cruise. Little
Oh, that's how very 80s.
One of my mates does it quarterly. She goes and does another booze
yeah.
and cheese cruise.
Still, I
Well,
didn't think that was
because
a
I
thing
used to live
anymore.
down like in Kent, we used to do them quite a lot. Obviously,
Yeah.
as a child, I wasn't driving over myself and filling up a van with wine and fags. But yeah,
For
they
American
were
audiences, fags are cigarettes, not homosexuals. She's not
That would-
transporting humans.
that would be much more fun, wouldn't it?
Yes,
Yeah,
just
we used
a
to go-
car full of twinks would be delightful.
We used to go and bum a fag off people. Do you remember
Also,
that?
that's taking a cigarette without buying a packet yourself, just to
Just to translate.
translate out of English and away from what would sound like American homophobia.
Well,
These are different things.
or philia. I don't know. Like,
And if you want to cook faggots, that's also different. That's different too.
yeah. Oh, brains faggots. They were great.
Yeah, Maester Tory, a car full of twinks you'll find bright and no. Absolutely, you will. That's why I loved it so much. Twinks, bears. Oh my.
Ah.
My brother's a bear down in Hove.
Hove actually.
Mm.
That wasn't that's just how we say Hove actually.
I have No idea now.
I don't know
What?
what's happening. Philippa, you're first, I think. Are you
I am
first or is Kat
first.
I'm not first. I'm last.
I now would like to read a proper biography of Sir Walter Raleigh, mainly because the articles online are really confusing and the
No.
dates are all over the shop. So excuse me if I don't quite get the chronology correct, but I will get the overall idea correct, I think. So I'm going to talk to you about his personal life, basically. So his parents, his siblings, his children, etc. So I'm not going chronologically. So this might dip into bits that Kat and Catherine will revisit, but hopefully put some context around it in terms of his personal relationships. Before I get started, though, we must thank Chrissy, who's just donated us
You
$9.999999.
imagine it's
Thank you.
cheese.
You may fascinate a woman with a piece of cheese. You can certainly fascinate this woman with a piece of cheese. Cheese.
Probably
Fascinating
give me
cheese.
some sort of acid reaction.
Yeah, everything gives you an acid reaction, including the Coke you insist on drinking. But there you go.
Look, at least I can get pissed.
Yeah.
Actually, no, that would probably give me an acid reaction as well, because everything does these
It
days.
torments me.
You'll be
It's okay.
fine. We'll just buy you
I'll be
loads of
fine.
champagne. It'll be fine.
I'll just buy champagne. Yeah, it's no problem.
Yeah.
It's no
Thank
problem. Right. So we're talking about this dude, and to be fair,
Look at that earring. Will you look at it? That is like a Christmas bauble.
I think it might be two. Is it two pearls or
looks
is it
like it's
I
one?
think he's got two pearly danglers.
Particularly grandiose.
They
There
are
was
almost
another.
testicular, frankly, aren't they?
They do. He's got balls hanging from his ear. That's
does.
basically what I think that was the look he was going for.
Oh, of course.
And love and virtue.
More
And
if I do.
And
Yeah.
he's 34 in, is that 15?
1588, I think that's it.
Yeah.
There was another portrait I could have put on, but I haven't. Where he's wearing a really quite flamboyant hat.
Yeah. He's dressed, he does, like, that is what you're looking at there. Those are all pearl encrusted buttons. You've got what looks to be a black velvet cape with a furred collar.
And what do you reckon those
white, are pearls?
They're pearls as well.
So that's white. That's either white silk or it's cloth of silver.
Oh, yeah.
Why
And
does
if you
his
look at his
hair
collar,
not match his
that is like
beard?
that collar there. The artist is showing that is the finest linen. It's his shirt is so fine linen that you can see through it.
Wow, that may have been the look he was going for, because
that is, nipples ahoy.
He had a charm. Let's put it that way. So the thing that may have let him down, and this is not disparaging to people from the Southwest, but he was born in Devon, and they have a distinctive accent.
They do.
If anyone knows Wurzel Gummidge, or if you just think typical farmer type. Anyway, that he probably had this accent. He's born in, again, straight off the bat.
You've ruined it for me now. I'm just
comes from the West Country. So he probably talks like that in the West
Spoiled
Country.
Now.
Like that.
There's no sort of finishing off words and things down there. It's very endearing. But so straight off the bat, with not knowing my dates, he's born on the 22nd of January, either in 1552 or 1554. But if he's had this portrait done in 1588 at 34, that would make it the 1554 date.
Yes, assuming that the wording of it has gone on at the time. It probably does, because the amor e virtu is his. And also, can you see up in the top left corner that semicircle?
Yeah.
So that's the moon.
The moon.
And that is there because he's paying homage to Elizabeth as Diana or Cynthia.
Yeah. Love it. I love all the language of iconography and whatever. So let's go for 1554 then. 22nd of January 1554. He's born at a place called Hayes Barton, which is South Devon. So if anyone knows Devon, it's kind of in between Exeter and Exmouth, not far from the sea, which may have given him his love of all things sea bound. I don't know. Maybe it's just a coincidence. He was the son of another Walter Raleigh. Sorry,
Of course he was.
straight away.
Of course.
And his third wife, Catherine. How do you say this? Champenown?
Champ-
Or is
Yeah,
it another one that's pronounced
whatever it
completely
is,
differently?
it potentially connects her
Chumley?
to.
yeah.
Is it?
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah.
Bad. Yes.
Okay, so either way,
That one.
both his parents have been married before, but it's his mother who has 3 sons by her previous marriage to a guy called Oates or Otho Gilbert, John, Humphrey, and Adrian. And he spends quite a lot of time with his half brother Humphrey. They go off on voyages together a little bit later on. But so he's got these 3 half brothers. He has another brother. So there's 2 boys born to this marriage. His elder brother is Carew Raleigh, and Carew. Well, there is the family on his mother's side is related to the Carews that we know of as their surname. So I'm thinking that's why it comes in, as it's quite an unusual first name, or maybe they're just trying to think of something different. But then again, there ends up being quite a few of them, so they don't really carry that on.
Yeah.
And so he's the youngest of 5 boys by the time he is born in, we're going to say 1554. He's born during the reign of Mary I, which is an issue for their family because they are most definitely Protestant. And his father, let's call him Walter the Old One. That's not very
Walter not so Raleigh.
Walter
the
elder. He has to hide in a tower. I'm not sure where this tower was. That in order to avoid execution at one point. So our Walter grows up with a distinct hatred for the Catholics, which actually he'll find is quite useful in the court of Elizabeth, which he ends up getting into. And he gets there via his. Well, there's a few links, but basically through his mother. Am I getting this right? Yeah.
I don't know.
He is so his mother's. Let me get this right. Aunt, that's right, is Cat Ashley. So Elizabeth I governess. So although he's not from a particularly wealthy family. I mean, they're not
Skin.
they're not peasants, but they're but both of his parents are sort of. I think his mother was the 4th daughter of, and etc. etc. So, but through this link with Cat Ashley, he and his brothers get introduced to court, and he becomes a bit of a favourite of Elizabeth, which so it kind of explains well her requirement to be surrounded by men with shirts where their nipples show through was such that he was able to find himself advantages at court. I mean, there's rumors whether his relationship with the Queen was ever sexual, but then when you put that in the context of her relationship with Dudley was asked if that was sexual, it seems more to disparage Elizabeth than be based on anything particularly real. But before he gets to court, he's already at the age of, so in 1569, so he is 14, 15. He's gone off to France to fight with the Huguenots. He is he's putting his money where his mouth is in his hatred of the Catholics.
Mm.
In 1572, he is registered as an undergraduate at Oriel College, Oxford, but he leaves in 1574 without his degree. And then in 1570, this is where the dates get a bit weird, and I would like to read a biography of him for someone who's looked at these, because 1575, he is apparently admitted to Middle Temple at the Inns of Court, presumably to complete his law education. Although when he's asked about that later on, much later on during his trial, he claims he doesn't have any law education, any sort of study. He didn't study law.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that's a bit like, no, I don't know anything about this. So his half brother, who I've already mentioned, Sir Humphrey Gilbert, had also been successful at court, and Elizabeth had granted them license to go exploring, to try and find the Northwest Passage, which sounds rude. Maybe it's just the time of night for me. And Spanish ships. If you happen to come across any Spanish ships, all the better.
Raid them.
What happens.
So they were unsuccessful with the former, but successful with the latter, and I think got quite rich off the back of these plundering expeditions. I mean, the Spanish nicked it, and they nicked it. It's a bit like a Robin Hood thing, except they gave it to the Queen, so not quite giving to the poor.
It started well, ended badly, like most things in history.
Yeah. So, and then when his half brother dies, he takes. I think he was almost sort of second in command. I think I get the impression to his half brother. But when his half brother dies, he sort of takes over the expeditions. But so he does these expeditions with his half brother, 1577, 1579, where they don't find this passage, but they do find Spanish ships to pilfer from. But by, I think, I'm not sure when he's introduced to court, but he's certainly there by early 1580s. So around about 1581, it's sort of known, end of 1581, it's sort of known he is rapidly becoming a favorite of Elizabeth, probably as the shirts. Which is interesting because 1578 is when Robert Dudley marries Lettice Knowles. And so this is so he's sort of replacing, I suppose, Dudley in Elizabeth's direct affections, which maybe also is what leads to these rumours that it could have been a physical relationship. He does have access. Oh, sorry, I can't remember the position he had. He was never on the Privy Council, but whatever position he had at court, he did have access to her. So anyway, that leads to the rumors as well. Either way, they're very close. He writes poetry to Elizabeth. That's, I mean, the whole courtly love setup at the time kind of gives that almost expectation. But yeah, so he starts to write poetry. But from November 1584, a lady called Elizabeth Throckmorton has become a lady in waiting to Elizabeth, and Walter Raleigh and Elizabeth Throckmorton start up a relationship. They keep this relationship secret because, as we know, when we've talked about Elizabeth before, she wasn't very pleased with either her ladies in waiting or her favourites having relationships.
Knocking boots.
And this is one with both.
Yes.
So the dalliance, the relationship, does lead to a pregnancy, and and they have a son called Daenerys.
Damerai? I think it's
Damerai,
Damerai.
even, sorry.
I'm happy to be corrected.
It's Damerai. I'd written 2 N's first and then corrected myself and then read it wrong. So that's great. Yeah, Damerai. And that baby sadly doesn't survive for very long. But the relationship becomes, that had precipitated their need to marry. So they got married. So this is, of course, now this massive secret that they've kept from Elizabeth. Elizabeth does find out, of course, it was going to come out at some point, and the couple are incarcerated in the Tower. And this is where I can't tell whether the baby was with them or not with them, or whether it had died before they went into Tower. This is where I'm finding different dates. But either way, their baby dies. Now, the baby's godfather had been Robert Devereux, 2nd Earl of Essex. And this name, the Damerai, this name apparently is a royal name, but I'm assuming a Plantagenet French royal name, because I've never come across it. But apparently it's got some sort of royal connotations.
Oh.
So the fact they've got married in secret, another one of Elizabeth's favourites has stood as godfather, and they've chosen this name with royal connotations. These combination is supposed to have, like, obviously, I think any one of those things, but it is going to piss Elizabeth off anyway. So the couple are arrested, incarcerated in the Tower of London. Walter manages to get back into the Queen's affections, but as far as I understand it, Bess is absented from court and she's not allowed back to court forevermore. She never comes back to court. But their relationship, so I will end with this. Their relationship, I'll come on to that in a minute, seems to be quite a loving one. They do go on to have 2 more children, Walter in 1593 and another Carew who's born in the Tower actually in 1605. So we get on to James VI's reign by then. I'm gonna go on to this. So I'm skipping big chronology, but I think that's because I think you girls are going to cover it anyway. But when Walter Raleigh is executed in 1618, he's executed by being beheaded with the axe in Westminster, and his body is interred at St Margaret's Church, the church that you can see that sits just outside of the Abbey. His body goes there. His head is embalmed and given to his wife, Bess Throckmorton. And so that's weird. I've missed out the bit where he writes her a poem when he first thinks he's going to be executed, telling her to make sure she remarries. I think the insinuation being he cares for her happiness. So I think they are close. Anyway, so she gets his head embalmed, and she has also a special bag made, and this may well be the very bag. This red velvet bag, which presumably had some sort of gold or silver brocade on it, which is now faded, or whatever you call it. I really should take more notice in textiles when I was at school. But anyway, it has been at this house called West Horsley Place in Surrey, presumably or possibly ever since, because Carew, their son, eventually married a lady called Lady Philippa Ashley. They moved to Horsley, but not to this place. This place was then owned at that point by Carew's uncle, Sir Nicholas Throckmorton. Doesn't really matter. But in 1642, he leaves the house to Carew and Philip and his wife Philippa. Well, to Carew, and he's married to Philippa. They spent £2,000 on it, but they couldn't actually do much. So this looks like a sort of Stuart, I suppose,
Mm.
house. It is just a facade. That is a single brick wall, barely attached to the house.
Oh, wow.
Interestingly, which basically just gave the house a facelift. But underneath there is pretty much the original house. And Bess, so Walter Raleigh's widow, spends most of the rest of her life with her son here at West Horsley Place, and she takes the head with her in this bag, we presume, because the bag has remained there ever since. And when the house opened up as a charity just before the pandemic, and they Historic Royal Palaces were looking to do something to commemorate the what would have been the 400th anniversary of his execution or something like that. Anyway, they came and they wanted to look at the bag, and they sort of said, this dates from the exact period, so it could well be the bag, and they had no idea. But anyway, it's still there. So she had the head in a bag, probably kept in a cupboard in her bedroom. She died, I think it was 29 years, 29, 24. She outlives him for a long time anyway, and the head remains with her the entirety for the rest of her life. And so it gets left at West Horsley Place. Now, Carew and his wife Philippa had 2 sons called Walter and Carew. I told you that. They didn't if they were looking for new names, they didn't carry this family.
They didn't look far enough.
Yeah. And Carew, the elder at this point, so Walter's who owned this place, he was offered a knighthood by Charles II. He passed it over to go to his son. He wanted his elder son Walter to get it. But unfortunately, in 1660, both Walter, his new baby girl Henrietta, and Carew, the younger, all died within just over a month of each other. So possibly of a plague outbreak, something like that. And at that point, the reason that's significant is when Carew and Philippa, who are now burying both their sons and their new baby granddaughter all in one go, when they bury them at the local church of St. Mary's, it is thought that they bury Walter Raleigh's head with.
I was going to say
them.
what happened to the head.
So this is where I was getting to. Sorry, yes.
Thank
So
God.
so his body's in St. Margaret's, and possibly it's still not proven where his head has actually ended up. So there's other sort of stories around the head still being buried or having been buried in a stairwell. Why you would choose a stairwell, I've got no idea. In the house, etc., etc. But it's most likely, out of all those stories, that the head was buried with what would have been his grandchildren and great grandsons and great granddaughter. So,
what a weird party bag.
Yes.
Yeah.
People not to
There you
invite
go.
over on a Friday evening.
Yeah, it's still there.
My
Oh,
goodness.
this is Bess. Sorry, I forgot to bring this up. So this was Bess. There you go.
Oh, they make a rather lovely couple, don't they?
Yeah,
They do.
I think so.
Yeah.
So there you are. So hopefully that's
wow.
The important people in his life anyway.
Yeah. Fabulous. Should we do word of the week?
Oh yes, go for it.
It's my turn, which means can only be one thing. And what can that one thing be? You can't. Absolute can't. I'm gonna hop in quickly. I'm gonna ask you to tell me what Friends, in the language of rogues of Georgian London, is a cock hoist.
Oh,
that is cock hoist. 2 words.
Is it in a Brighton basement by any chance?
It's not. Tis not. Tis not.
Oh,
Tis not.
Disappointing.
Georgian London.
Oh, of course, of course.
Is it
cock hoist?
physical? Is it an instrument? Is it a physical thing? Or
No.
oh,
Something to do with chickens?
No.
No.
um, is it? Are we describing a person? Is this sort of a personality trait? No. Oh, someone said codpiece.
Mm-mm.
Hmm.
So hoist means obviously to lift. Is there
Yes.
lifting involved?
Yes.
Is this lifting of a dead thing, an
No.
alive thing, an inanimate thing,
And a live thing.
an alive thing?
Is it an
Should be by
erection?
this point.
Is it-
Is it? It's not an erection then.
No.
Oh man,
Cock
Lauren, a
hoist.
pulley system?
No.
A cock hoist. Could cock have been confused with cook, and it's some sort of way to lift a pot? That really
No.
hot. No. Okay.
It's a
That's
living
is
thing.
that-
Shall I jump? Because we're going further off. We're going further off.
Oh,
This
okay.
comes to my favourite side
Don't Google
topic
it.
and historical thing of the Georgian period, and that, my friends, is bare knuckle prize fighting.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
And the difference between there's lots of difference between pre-Queensberry rules boxing and earlier pugilisms. And one of them is that with pugilism, there you can do things like butting, maybe biting, grappling. And so a cock hoist is a cross buttock throw. So I'm assuming it's almost like a judo throw, that you get somebody and you manage to get underneath them and you use your rump to put them on the floor.
Oh.
So it's not as rude as it sounds, but I had to share it because it's two of my favorite things. It sounds filthy.
Mm.
And on top of that, it's about boxing. So no apologies.
You were going to say it's about cocks. It's two of my favourite things.
I should say three of my favorite things.
Oh,
Three of my
dear.
favorite things. Yes. So
Morgan, that sounds rather uncomfortable. It does. It
Yeah.
does.
yes. There's all
Thank
sorts
you.
of
I am
Scarlett.
envisaging it in my head and I can't. I don't know why I'm looking over here like if someone's just going to
Okay, you've got some
practical demonstration.
some
and then
boxers
leave.
ready to demo what you're on about.
Oh
yeah,
dear. Mm.
all sorts of fun terms for fighting in here. For example, cunny thumbed. I think we've done that before.
Oh yeah.
Cunny thumbed, which is
With,
rather than when you make your fist, fingers in,
Yeah.
thumb in. Cunny thumbed is that. Don't punch someone with your thumb inside. Thumbs out. Don't be cunny
You're
thumbed.
taking notes. Not you, Lucas. You should be in bed.
That's a
be cunning.
grip when
Don't
you're
be
waiting.
cunny thumbed.
Yeah.
Right.
There we go.
Okay.
So that was our cant for a little while. I've got Sir Walter's professional life, and I probably will be covering some similar ground to Philippa because so much of his professional life is intertwined with the personal. So as you say, he's in his teens. He's fighting with the Huguenot forces in France. We talked about him attending university and then perhaps going and doing this law degree, but then later saying he doesn't do a law degree. What I will say for me, and I have no proof of this, is he does end up running in circles with people like Christopher Marlowe. And Christopher Marlowe is somebody who's the university didn't want to give him his MA, but factions close to the Elizabethan government, perhaps working directly on Elizabeth's orders themselves, wrote to the university and insinuated in some way that it would be best if he was granted his MA, despite the fact that he'd not fucking turned up, because while he was away, he was doing services to the crown that meant that he had learned sufficiently to be regarded as a Master of Arts. In short, people assume that this means that he was spying. So perhaps what we see with Raleigh, this youthful fighting, so he's a military man from very early age, this slip away from university and then going into the Inns of Court, these kinds of connections and these political machinations, maybe he's there with a separate purpose and he's kind of moving, and it's not about actually an education, it's about spying, maybe. Certainly he is clearly a man of letters, because he does become a court poet. It's said that one of the first currently extant examples of Raleigh's poetry dates back to 1576, and it's the preface to George Gascoigne's The Steel Glass, which is a satire. His half-brother ropes him in for his voyage to what he's been licensed to do is, quote, discover remote, heathen and barbarous lands not actually possessed of any Christian prince, which is, of course, apparently vital when you're stealing other people's lands. And also, as well, finding the Northwest Passage. Now, this does become an obsession, the Northwest Passage, and it's something that very famously gets taken on as well by a man called Martin Frobisher. And through the reign of Elizabeth, this process of finding the Northwest Passage is almost consistently derailed by the greed of the people involved. So in the case of Gilbert and Raleigh, it's because they've got some delightful other ships to try and rob blind. In the case of Frobisher, they land in a place called Baffin Island. Don't ask me where that is. But they find this black glittery rock, and they are absolutely hell-bent on saying that the glitter in it is clearly gold. The rock is black. So it's brought back and it's assayed, and the assayers differ. Some say there's fuck all in there. Some say it's absolutely laden with gold. So this then completely derails Frobisher's hunt for the Northwest Passage, just as Raleigh's hunt for the Northwest Passage has been derailed. And they start bringing back tons and tons and tons and tons of this black mineral. Eventually, and in fact, the final assays come in just before Drake sets off for his circumnavigation. I think if those moments had been reversed, so if the assays had come in before he'd gone for his circumnavigation, he probably wouldn't have been able to go, because they find they have literally tons of this black rock that is full of pyrite, not gold.
Right, fool's gold.
Yeah, it's effectively. So what it's now used for is it ends up going into the thing that basically becomes the tarmac of certain streets in London. So when you have that story about London streets being paved with gold, it is, but it's fucking fool's gold. So he's back. Raleigh is back in court after this abortive hunt for the Northwest Passage. He's certainly loitering around court by the 1580s because he is involved in various scraps. In fact, he gets committed to both the Fleet and then the Marshalsea for being involved in separate brawls. This is somebody with a temper, or at least a desire for satisfaction in causes. Perhaps a hothead. His piss and vinegar rage is perhaps thought useful to send elsewhere, so he is sent over to Ireland to deal with the Desmond Rebellion. 1581, he is back at court by this point, and he's rising high in Elizabeth's favour. This is around the time where the myth about the cloak over the puddle story, so that Elizabeth's dainty little toes don't get wet. This is a sign that he is getting into her favour, and it's possibly linked to the fact that she starts calling him Walter, as in the liquid, rather than Walter. And this is where his description of her or linking her to Cynthia, he really plays up on that, because Cynthia is the goddess of the moon in that portrait, who also has complete power over the tides or over water. So water and Cynthia, and one of his poems, it goes as follows: if Cynthia be a queen, a princess and supreme, keep these amongst the rest, or say it was a dream. For those that like expound, and those that loathe express, meanings accord as their minds are moved more or less. For writing what thou art, or showing what thou were, adds to the disdain, to the other but despair. Thy mind of neither needs, in both seeing it exceeds. It's short, mercifully. So his half-brother Humph dies in 1583, and as Philip says, he takes up his colonizing ambitions. He is first, and perhaps I think, having had the experiences he's had in Ireland, as in so many cases, is the test ground for English colonial expansion, treatment, ambition. And so Raleigh wants to plant a colony. He wants to explore Virginia. He
I bet he does. Sorry.
He funds voyages.
Trying to find the Northwest Passage still.
Yeah, he's trying to find.
Not very good at it, is he?
He's trying to go in all directions. Every hole's a goal for Walter Raleigh, and he funds this expedition. One of which he sends a guy called Thomas Harriot and a guy called John White. They produce together. So Harriot produces the text. It's called A Brief and True Report of the Newfoundland of Virginia. John White produces watercolors that later become engravings. This is one of the most comprehensive, the watercolors particularly, comprehensive views of Indigenous life in Virginia from this period. It has been described as being a proto-ethnography. The first colony is all male. It fucks up very quickly because they get into a violent activity with the Indigenous population, and they end up murdering one of the Indigenous community. That doesn't go down well, obviously. So the colony is abandoned. Not long after, John White, funded again by Walter Raleigh, is sent back, and the colony of Roanoke is founded. Roanoke is a mixed sex and age community. It's men, women, and children. John White's daughter is part of it. She and her husband give birth to the first English child born in the New World, a girl called Virginia Dare. White returns to get more supplies. As he's doing so, the Armada is kicking off. So the supplies take a while to come together. And eventually, when he does return, he finds the colony completely abandoned. It looks like it's been looted. All he sees is on a tree the word Croatoan, and on a fence post the letter CRO. No one knows what's happened to these colonists. And it's an enduring mystery that's still being investigated today. This is Raleigh's obsession: finding new places, settling there, exploiting the land. However, as Elizabeth's favourite, he's getting loads of stuff. So he's at court, he's getting commissions and grants. 1584, he's made a member of Parliament. He gets extensive estates in Ireland. He's knighted in 1585. 1587, he becomes captain of the Queen's personal guard. He's writing all this court poetry that flatters Elizabeth and secures her favour. It connects him with this incredibly artistic courtly circle and artistic circle as well. So Edmund Spenser's Fairy Queen, he's influencing the reception of that. So he's really kind of furthering the artistic merits. If he wanted to go on these New World expeditions, he was going to be sorely disappointed. He could fund them, but Elizabeth wasn't letting him out of her sight. So he organizes voyages over there in 1584, 1585, and 1587. What he is also doing in the 1580s is he is the rest of his attention is highly focused on the defensive fortifications of England in the face of Anglo-Spanish tensions, which ultimately boil over, of course, in 1588 with the Armada. So Raleigh is down in Devon. He's making sure the coast defences are good. He's obsessed about that as well. He is given the credit for introducing potatoes and tobacco into England. He almost certainly didn't do either of those things. With potatoes, the crop may have been brought over by his father into Ireland, so he may have a familial connection. When it comes to tobacco coming into England, at best, he popularizes it. It's much like Anne Boleyn did not invent the French hood in England. At best, she popularizes it. It all starts to go tits up not long afterwards in 1591 with the marriage to Bess Throckmorton. She's livid when she learns about it in 1592, puts them both in the Tower. Perhaps the reason why Walter is released first is because the death of Damerai, if they are in the Tower, then Elizabeth is moved by his grief, maybe not sufficiently to welcome Bess Throckmorton back, of course. And she will keep him at arm's length. He is not welcome back to court until 1597. There, in the 1590s, there is also an allegation that Raleigh was an atheist. With that being said, his writings, his fighting for the Huguenot cause, there is nothing to suggest that he was anything other than a completely conforming member of Elizabeth's Church of England. He perhaps did engage in some vocalization of skepticism, but that could be more about him, the circles that he's moving in, the desire to engage in rhetorical discourse and debate. He is moving in this very elite, very educated country house circle of philosophers, politicians, explorers, polymaths, where you sometimes argue for the sake of argument.
I do that.
His contact with Christopher Marlowe doesn't help his cause. Marlowe's also accused of being an atheist. He's hanging out with Henry Percy, the 9th Earl of Northumberland. This links him to some kind of radical ideas. The notion, though, and the accusation of atheism, today, if we see that as atheism is a very cut and dry term. It's somebody who doesn't believe in God. When I see somebody described as an atheist in this period, I wonder if it ever actually means that. I wonder if it means that you don't believe in my God, rather than you don't believe in any God. So question mark.
Yeah.
But this is also at a time where, the new religion is, I mean, I imagine it is being debated and
debated and disputed because they are still shaping it. A guy called Robert Persons accuses Raleigh of presiding over a, quote, school of atheism, which is, and he's been essentially corrupted by Thomas Harriot, and under them, quote, both Moses and our Saviour, the Old and the New Testament are jested at, and the scholars are taught, among other things, to spell God backwards. What it also does, of course, is that this narrative, this story, it does become a way to target Elizabeth, because somebody that she has favoured is not just heretical because he's not supporting the papal supremacy. He's more than that. He's more than just a Protestant. He is something far more disgusting. Raleigh's new fixation in the 1590s is finding El Dorado, the mythical, fabled city of gold. 1595, he sets sail. He sails down the Orinoco River, which my geography is shit, but allegedly it's now in what is now Venezuela. he writes of his experiences, writing of the discovery of the large, rich, and beautiful empire of Guyana. This is another promotion of the colonial endeavour, much like his funding of the Brief and True Report of the Newfound Land of Virginia. It's not just about him going, he wants more people to put their money and their bodies where their mouths are, if you will. However great this work is, Elizabeth doesn't seem to show how impressed she is, but ultimately, the poetry, the trip to Guyana doesn't do it. However, he does take part in 1596 on the raid at Cadiz. So he raids the Spanish at Cadiz, and that does seem to win Elizabeth over, presumably because he brought her back lots of shiny.
Elizabeth is like, yes, okay.
Lots of lovely money. Off you come back now. As a reward, he's named as the governor of the Isle of Jersey. And then he doubles down because in 1601, he is part of suppressing the rebellion of the Earl of Essex. So he shows his loyalty to Elizabeth. However, it's often pointed out that had Essex not been scuppered in quite the way he was, it's very likely that he would have been a favourite of the incoming monarch, James I. And 6th. He did love a beautiful boy. Essex was famously a beautiful boy. For whatever reason, it appears that when James came down to rule in England in 1603, there was an almost instantaneous dislike and distrust of Raleigh. This is not helped by Raleigh's name becoming implicated in the main plot. So there's the by and the main plot early in James's reign, whereby it's alleged that people are looking to replace James with his cousin, Lady Arbella Stuart, who was another potential successor for Elizabeth. I think for a long time her preferred successor. His involvement in this leads to him being tried. He is convicted of treason and he is sentenced to death. This is then commuted, put as a stay of execution, and he will spend the next 13 years imprisoned in the Tower of London. He is held in what is now known as the Bloody Tower. Ooh, ominous. But when Raleigh was living there, it had a far more salubrious name, which was the Garden Tower. Can you guess why it's called the Garden Tower, ladies?
It overlooked the garden.
It overlooked the garden. It also
did the Victorians rename it?
It possibly slightly earlier than that. It may have been renamed around about the same time as Traitor's Gate gets renamed, but certainly by the Victorian period, that story is up and flourishing. Of course. So he's in the Garden Tower, but he is still a sir. He's still a man of means, and you can have a lovely life in prison if you've got the money and the position. So he has his comforts. All he is deprived of is his liberty. He still has the liberty to probably walk the confines of the tower. He can have friends visit, his family visits. After all, his and Bess's son, Carew, is conceived in the fortress, born there in 1605. And he's actually born in Tower Hill in a house that Bess had rented, but the birth is registered and presumably he's baptized in the chapel of St. Peter of Vincula.
I think he is actually, yeah.
So on top of this, Raleigh can grow exotic plants. I think probably in the garden, but there are other gardens on the tower, in the tower complex. And he is growing these exotic plants from seeds that he'd gathered on his travels. And in doing so, he's making them into herbal remedies and medicines. He makes something called Raleigh's balsam or Raleigh's tincture or the balsam of Guyana. This is something involving strawberry water and what Raleigh refers to as his great cordial that's got numerous ingredients, herbs, spices. It's got ambergris, which is secretion from a sperm whale. Apparently bits of deer horn is shaved in, pearl powder, etc. one of the people that comes to visit Raleigh while he's imprisoned is James's son, Henry, Prince of Wales. One wonders whether he had some of Raleigh's great cordial during his final sickness. If he did, it didn't fucking work. In addition to making up potions like some traveling charlatan, they may have worked. I'm being unkind. I think actually I think there is some evidence that the things he was making would have had medicinal purposes, and they would have been effective. He's also writing the history of the world, which is a big task. The whole world. He's writing the history of all of it. He does have access to the books that are held at the Tower's library. It's thought that he originally started working on this as a way of helping to provide a foundation for Henry's education, but then it kind of gets rerouted, obviously, when he dies. It is completed. The first 5 volumes are completed and published in 1614. However, it's not massively kind about monarchies in general, unsurprisingly, considering where he is and why. So it is banned. There is the command goes out that it should be seized and banned. Nevertheless, it is printed many times in the 17th century, as often is the case when something is banned, people want more of it. Raleigh, though, after this imprisonment, he does manage to convince James that he should let him go. And what he basically does, he says to him, I will go and I will find El Dorado and I will make you super rich. Like, there is a city of gold and it can all be yours. And James is like, well, I don't like you. I think you're almost certainly a traitor and a bit of a bellend. But if you bring me lots and lots of lovely gold, maybe I'll forgive you. Here's the dealio. If you get into any kerfuffles with Spain, because by now the political situation has shifted. Elizabeth's pirates, are gone. James wants peace with Spain. He doesn't want to fuck about anymore. He says, you can do this, but let me be clear. If you tempt war with Spain, you're mega fucked. If you bring back loads and loads of gold, then spectacular. We can be friends again. So he poodles off and he goes sailing. It's a shit show. They are blown, of course, by weather. They keep coming back to re-landing in England. Eventually, they set sail. They end up becalmed, so they're just stuck in the middle of the fucking ocean, running out of food, getting sicker and sicker and sicker. Raleigh gets very unwell, so he ultimately when they start moving again and get they try to get supplies. They get basically attacked, so they have to leave again. When it comes to near the mouth of the Orinoco, Raleigh is so sick he has to recuperate. So he sends his second in command. He's like, "You're in charge. Don't fight the Spanish." That's the one rule: find the gold, don't fight the Spanish. Off they go, and what do you think happens? They get into a fucking scuffle with the Spanish, don't they?
You had one job.
Got all the gold.
Yeah, you had 2 jobs, and you fucked up both of them. 1, because El Dorado doesn't exist. 2, because you fought the fucking Spanish. So they, for some reason, Raleigh's like, it's probably fine. And he gets on a boat and goes home. Maybe, of course, he's concerned about any retribution might be taken out on his family who are still in England. Maybe that's why he returns. But either way, maybe he thinks he can sweet talk James. I don't know why he goes back. He does return to England. He is immediately arrested, imprisoned back in the Tower. This time, I believe he's in the Beauchamp Tower. And the order of execution is reinstated. There's not going to be over a decade to fart about anymore. This happened quickly. He is, as we said, beheaded outside the Palace of Westminster on the 29th of October, 1618, and his head goes in his wife's purse. So that's his professional life.
Pouch.
Mm-hmm.
There you are.
There you go.
Oops. What makes someone go, I'm going to keep their head and carry it around?
I'd probably the same ideology that a century earlier would be like, what I really want is a saint's fingernails. That's what I need. I need a box
Need it.
I need
of John the Baptist toenail clippings. That's what I need.
Yeah. I'm listening to a book about John of Gaunt at the moment, and I can't remember which saint it was, but he was boiled so that the bones could be distributed to various monasteries. Ugh.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Yeah,
we've
but
still
I
got.
get that. That's like having a piece of something holy in your monastery. It's very
Yeah,
different to something about someone's head, you know.
but,
When it's,
We've still
maybe
got.
she didn't feel like she'd seen enough of him. He'd been away a lot.
she wasn't ready. Maybe it was a
I
bet.
I
Wonder if she
suppose
ever looked at
also
it.
it's a case of if
Yeah.
people would steal the heads of
Sit
executed
on the
people.
table, have a chat with
Yeah.
it.
No, people would steal the heads of executed people or try and reclaim them, because otherwise they were just left to moulder on London Bridge, which is about shame and disgrace. If she has control of the head,
round, bury it. Don't like.
I mean, she's not the only one, is she?
the idea about her carrying it around to parties and stuff, that certainly does come up. Whether or not she actually did is a question.
Yeah.
If she is carrying it to parties, it's perhaps a case of look what you did.
She might have been waiting for the opportunity to bury it, get permission to put the head with the body.
Yeah.
You know, not wanting it separated.
Or maybe
I mean,
she just had a bit of a strange sense of humour.
There are plenty of people. If we think about Victorian mourning jewellery, people who've got bits of hair. Today, people put ashes in diamonds. People do carry their loved ones around with them. I think that
this is literally, yeah,
a bit different.
But I mean, would I necessarily? People do all sorts of very strange things when they are grief-stricken and traumatized.
Yeah, because you'd get to a point as well where you might have done that initially, and then someone's talking, and then you can't just go, "Oh, I don't feel quite as upset as before." You can't just bin it, can you?
No,
it's kind of a bit rude at that point. So,
yeah.
So there we go.
So yes,
I don't know what's happening now. What's happening now? Because
nothing. I think we're going straight into your bit.
Okay. Well, I thought so, but then I wasn't sure. So there's been. I can only just be désolé because there's a little bit of overlap here. So
a pulse.
I don't know much about explorers. I need to explore. That sounds a bit dodgy, doesn't it? But yeah, I have to say that I don't really. This is an area of which I lack knowledge, for which I can only apologise and feel slightly ashamed of myself about. So I shall strive to do better in the future. So anyway, yes. So Sir Walter, I think the main thing he's known for, and I'll expand on this in a little while, obviously, is his role in the drive and ambition for England towards colonialism. He was a great sea adventurer, a legendary sea adventurer, and there were a few of them around this time, also known as sea dogs or privateers, or as Kat quite rightly said,
pirates.
You also will have heard the name of some of his contemporaries, one of whom has already come up, Sir Francis Drake and also Sir John Hawkins. So it's a bit trendy to be a bit of an explorer on the water around.
Well, it was lucrative, no?
It was the done thing. If you could, it was a good gig if you could get it. So as we said, he was a favourite of Elizabeth. And in terms of legacy, we love to talk about these people that Elizabeth did or didn't have relationships with, don't we? We find them very intriguing. They provide us with all these endless did they, didn't they, did she, wouldn't she? What was
she certainly liked to have them around.
She did. She favoured the company of a younger gentleman.
If it was the other way around, it would have been dodgy as.
She got it from Daddy. I mean,
well, yeah.
Oh,
well,
yeah,
dodgy as. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It all makes sense. It all makes sense. So, but this is why his love for Elizabeth and her love for him, whichever way you want to look at it, is obviously where we get to the colonies named Virginia. But we'll come to that a little bit more shortly. So the tobacco, so the legend of tobacco, as you said, we think about tobacco and potatoes being those things. They're all part really of his legend as such. I think one of the things being as well is that the Spanish had already, we've just discovered these things, and the Spanish are going, no, I think you'll find we discovered them already. So, but yes, certainly in terms of tobacco, he, as Kat said, he sort of popularised it. It became quite fashionable at court, although apparently it made Elizabeth feel a little bit nauseous. She didn't like the smell of it very much. But in terms of legacy, popularising tobacco is not going to get you many bonus points these days, is it? Really? I think that's certainly got a lot to answer for. And he believed apparently that smoking was good for coughs. It was a good cure for coughs.
Yeah, well, I mean,
logically,
that continued for a long time. That did.
That was basically smoke in the
so if in doubt, have a fag. There you go.
Cigarette
for okay, so the legendary of the city of gold of El Dorado. This is still, and I was going to look into this, but I wasn't. Then
is he responsible for that incredibly bad soap opera in the 90s?
Oh,
I don't think he can be blamed for that. That is not based in. That is not based in the City of Gold.
Yes,
El Dorado. That was ropey.
That
Was all a dream? Was that Sunset Beach? Sunset Beach was all a dream.
Sunset Beach was amazing.
All El Dorado was not all a dream.
Amazing.
El Dorado was I don't know why that finished.
It was awful. It was so
the set.
I loved it. I love that, and I love Sunset
Crossroads wobbly. You shut a door and the wall would do this.
Oh God! I wonder if you can look that up on YouTube.
Okay, well, I'm not quite sure if we can squeeze that into the legend of Sir Walter Raleigh.
I don't think we can blame him for that. I don't think
that's a little bit. Obviously, the legend of El Dorado is still
colonisation, tobacco, but El Dorado,
terrible soap. I think
no one deserves to have that laid
Okay. His attempts to discover the legendary city of El Dorado. So he didn't find El Dorado, of course, but they did lead him to explore South America, and the detailed descriptions of the landscapes that he was able to provide did obviously serve to be very useful later on. So this was all information that he was gathering, and the capital city of North Carolina is Raleigh, honouring his legacy. So coming back to this again, so during his travels, he gathered the seeds from exotic plants and then grew from these while he was in the tower. So I know I'm covering a little bit what Kat's already said, but they had a small apothecary garden. And in a little courtyard just down below his room. And the 400th anniversary of his death, this little lost garden was installed at the Tower of London. So you can go and have a little bit of a neb around that. Created numerous cordials and herbal remedies, including one made from borage, rosemary, marigold, saffron, juniper berries, lemons, red roses, and red gilly for new mothers. A tonic for new mothers. And he got a reputation as a reputable alchemist, providing medical assistance to members of the royal family, including Queen Anne.
Oh.
So with his lotions and potions and concoctions. He provided medical assistance to members of the great family. His most famous royal connection was the Great Cordial, which I think you said was considered an incomparable remedy. And it contains the Great Cordial, over 40 ingredients. And decades after his death, the work in the field is still very influential. Alice Bertolini, the Royal College of Physicians, describes him as a renowned man of early modern medicine.
Gosh.
Praise indeed. And so also mentioned he was considered one of the era's most accomplished poets and chroniclers, whether if you like that type of thing. So there's, like so many things, there are quite a number of minor works that people aren't sure if they're attributed to him or not, but there's a good number of them. But the major works are The Opinion of Mr. Raleigh upon motions made to him for the means of subduing the rebellion in Munster. Catchy. Report of the truth of the flight about the Isles of Azores, the discovery of the large and beautiful empire of Guinea, a discourse touching a war with Spain, and of the protecting of the Netherlands in 1603.
You need to protect your Netherlands.
Your nether region is very important, Philip, you're right. As already noted, so possibly, obviously, his most famous work, The History of the World, 1614. And I know Kat's mentioned this, sorry, but yeah, he had access to over 500 books within the tower, and he was able to source these to help him write this huge project. Yeah, and obviously King James, he wasn't sort of the best pleased with him. So I've got history showing the record of God's providence, a doctrine that pleased contemporaries and countered the charge of atheism. King James was meant to note that many warnings, the injustice of kings is always punished. His cynicism about the king and the monarchy and the Archbishop of Canterbury made the Archbishop of Canterbury quite cross.
Shocker.
Made him a little bit of an enemy. George Abbott demanded his books to be seized and burnt, but to no avail. And as the book became very popular during the 17th century. And of course, Apologia, I can't pronounce it, Apology for the Voyage to Guinea in 1618, because, as said, he is known for wanting to pop off on some of these little trips, not actually making a particularly big success of them, which does, of course, bring us to colonization. Now, this, again, isn't something I know very much about, and it would be very wrong of me to talk too much about something so comprehensive in that respect. And obviously time is a barrier to how much we have to hear. I wouldn't really know exactly where to start and finish, but I'm also aware this can be considered a little bit culturally sensitive. So just be aware that I am aware of that. But history is history, ladies and gentlemen. So yeah, I think the colonization really is what most of us associate with Raleigh. And there is obviously so much that has been covered, so many books have been written, so many podcasts, all these different types of things. You know, we really can see the range of different topics and sources that come through from all these different people that have studied him. So in terms of legacy, we have so much written, so much examined, so much researched, so much put together. He's a very interesting man, and obviously we've talked about and mentioned his associations with Elizabeth and the fascinations that all these things tend to hold. So in terms of the colonization, so it took place between the late 15th and early 19th century. So it wasn't just us. We was like, yeah, we're going to have a go at that. But it was very far from being just the English that sort of took part in this. And I think there is that little bit. It's one of those things that people, if they don't know, they don't know. It's kind of the assumption that we went for this. Actually, we were only one part of this whole shebang. So as well as us, it was Spain, Portugal, France, Russia, the Netherlands, Denmark, and Sweden. So they all wanted to explore and then claim the Americas. And obviously they were interested in natural resources, as people always are. You know, you give people an opportunity, they see something, they see the benefit, normally financially, obviously, but also in terms of the physical minerals and products and things that an area can give them to base whatever they need on. And yeah, so before you know where you are, everybody's thought this is a good idea and everyone wants in on it, basically. Natural resources, human capital, all these things. And this led to the establishment of the settler colonial states. And unfortunately, what comes with this, of course, is the disestablishment, enslavement, and even genocides of the indigenous peoples in the Americas. And that's what we see, unfortunately. The American colonies are the 13 British colonies established during the 17th and 18th centuries in what is now part of the Eastern United States. And there was, so numerically to 13 from the time of them founding up to, of course, the American Revolution. And obviously many of our friends across the pond will celebrate the 4th of July. So around the time of founding the American Revolution, the settlements have spread far beyond, obviously. Oh, sorry, my crystal just, you heard a thud, my crystal just rolled off my chair, sorry. And extended from Maine all the way into Georgia when the revolution began. And it was around about that time of the revolution that they had about 2.5 million American colonists. So I don't know if we'd say 2.5 million people now, obviously, 2.5 million then was a lot more then than it is now. It's hugely notable amounts of people that are finding themselves within these new settlements, really. So you can see when there's that many people, that's huge changes to every aspect of that society, of that landscape, of all of those types of things. So the colonies were established really for economic reasons, social reasons, political reasons, religious reasons. I know Kat has done a talk before that we talked about how, you know, it was a race to see who could make England a bit more Protestant first. I'm kind of doing that as a very, you know, but that isn't necessarily, I think, from what I've gleaned, the first thing that people have thought about. They've thought about money, they've thought about the use of the indigenous populations as slaves and so forth, but not necessarily. I've never heard before I spoke with Kat about that, somebody particularly talk about this as people using the colonies initially for religious, for advantageous religious purposes. So that was definitely something that I never heard before. Yeah, while the colonies were controlled by England, they actually operated independently in many ways, the colonies. But yeah, people took it to basically exploit everything they could in that area, whether for whatever reason or combination of things, they found those things useful to themselves. And we go back to the old thing again and again and again, don't we? That at the end of the day, people went in with, we talk about it's of the time and it was the attitude of the time. You know, how do we go back now and say, well, all those people who went and they said, yeah, but we know we're bringing prosperity, we're bringing skills, and we're going to help restructure the landscape so that you have better infrastructure. And we've done all these things. And there are people that look back at colonialisation and who have done studies and written books and topics and papers and all types of things on this that will argue, and you know, I'm just putting these arguments across. I'm not saying whether or not they're right or wrong, but I'm just saying that they will argue that there were many benefits to colonialization, such as, you know, improving infrastructure, giving new skills, overseeing new populations, giving people opportunities. So all these things were there, and they were built on over time and became advantageous for the people, apparently, who were living in the areas, and the people, they were creating opportunities for other people in less advantageous decisions to come to the colonies. So this was kind of the argument, but we all know that these arguments can be very, well, I did it because I thought it was the right thing to do at the time, and very much covering up what your own motivations were. And for somebody to just say, well, you know, we look back now at certain things, not just necessarily, and we say, well, that's what people just did then. Everyone in Europe was doing it. We thought it was okay. We thought we were helping. We don't look at people in the same way now. But I think it's hard to look at colonialisation and not go, it wasn't very great for everyone concerned, was it really? Yeah, you can go on about your economic growth and the things that you've bought for us. Let's also talk about things like infectious diseases. They bought those for the indigenous peoples as well. People will talk about good points and bad points of how the ecosystems were put together or destroyed. People will talk about the benefits that they believed genuinely that they were bringing in terms of their religion. So we're bringing you great religion, we're taking away bad religion. So I think a lot of these things were done. How much do people genuinely believe that they were doing the right thing, and how much did they say that they were doing the right thing because they saw advantage for themselves? It's really tricky, but poor treatment of indigenous populations, income and wealth inequality, weak government infrastructure, some people would say, religious conflicts. I mean, religious conflicts, where do we even start with these over history? Probably better not to. But some people will argue, you know, that these were the things that we saw immediately and then leading up to, obviously, the revolution. But, you know, there are arguments still now. And I'm not saying whether or not I think any of these things are right or wrong. I'm just saying that there is a whole body of work and evidence and so forth out there now that sort of says we still see the negative impacts in the Americas today of the colonialization in terms of environmental degradation, economic underdevelopment, racial profiling, systemic racism, poor social infrastructure, and all these things manifest into inequalities in society for the original indigenous populations compared to the people that came over and some of the more direct lines of ancestry. Anyway, that's that really. So Raleigh, that was a bit Raleigh, as I think you probably guessed, in terms of looking at him as a person overall, as part of his legacy, is we see him with his nipply shirts as a man who was quite bold and very charismatic. People generally took to him quite well, apart from the ones that didn't. But he did have a charisma about him, and he certainly enthralled Elizabeth, and he certainly enthralled Bess Throckmorton, and he had a very vivid imagination, and that allowed him to envisage what he saw the Americas could be. He had this vision for colonization, and although he was not the one that saw it through himself, certainly, as I mentioned, the information that he brought back and he was able to feed to other people allowed other people to make the movements and take the steps and put together the plans that eventually came to form colonialization. So although he didn't actually kind of go and do it himself, he was the one that really laid the groundwork for it. So I think there's a little part of Raleigh that, wanted to be a little bit more than he was. He had a very vivid imagination, and he was a great visionary, but he didn't quite live up to absolutely everything he hoped it would be. But yeah, he's been the subject of endless, films, TV series, things on YouTube, stuff like this, novels, non-fiction work, obviously. You name it, you name it, someone has written about it, filmed it, made us a story about him. He's extremely well known, and I think he's just one of those people that's there's always going to be a little bit of folklore around him, isn't he? He's always going to be something a little
really
bit of a
as someone who straddles like significant parts of Elizabeth's reign and James's reign, and that switch in his fortunes
which is something we see for quite a few people, isn't it? Goes one way or the other as you get that swap over.
I mean, James is a bit, so he's very superstitious, isn't he, James? One of the things I forgot to mention is when, obviously, being convicted of being a traitor, effectively, all his lands and everything are confiscated as usual. So Bess tries to, or does petition for lands and property to be at least somewhat restored to Carew. And apparently, and I don't know if this is legend, I don't know if you've heard this, but James sees Carew at court when they come to do this sort of petition for their things back, and James thinks that he looks too much like his father, and therefore thinks of him as a ghost of Walter Raleigh, and so cannot bring himself to restore the lands. That's so
Shakespeare knew what he was doing when he wrote the Scottish play. When Shakespeare wrote the Scottish play and he puts Banquo in it, and this kind of James's obsession in Scotland with demons and witches, and when I think that there are times where James is looking to clean house of people he doesn't like, but I also think he is a deeply afraid, distressed, paranoid man. But so would you be. This is a childhood fucking bathed in blood. This is a childhood of constant assassination threats, of your nearest and dearest being killed, the people that are caring for you, caregiver after caregiver, being brutally murdered, your life being under threat, just the notion that your mother killed your father, like just consistent fucking misery from start to finish. And so is it any wonder that he is attuned to people who come to court in some ways, it's almost like he's more offended by Walter Raleigh's potential involvement in putting Arbella Stewart on the throne, and by the time we get to the gunpowder plot, he's like, this is just fucking any given Wednesday, babe. Like,
He's so superstitious, isn't he? He's so scared. Like he's the witch hunts and
crazy.
this belief.
I'm seeing a lot of conversation about Raleigh and the and enslavement, and I think when we're talking about, so if we divide up enslavement, so his behaviour in Ireland and his settlement of Ireland and the way he deals with what were known as the Irish kerns, and the way that essentially he and his coterie are talking about it, they have a vision of what we might classify as indentured servitude or serfdom or slavery for Irish people. And they are very much following a classical Roman model of enslavement. That is not what chattel slavery was. Chattel slavery functions completely differently in many ways from the classical Romanesque enslavement, principally because while slaves in the Roman period are forced to work without money, they are still viewed as people. They're property, but they're people. Chattel slavery relies upon the bestialization and the dehumanization of the people that you are enslaving. With Raleigh's desire to colonize, or as they call it, make plantations, and the kind of the crops he's interested in growing and all of that kind of things. That's one of the reasons why he gets placed as, or named as, a father of the transatlantic slave trade, because what eventually allows those plantations of sugar and cotton, of course, to flourish in the Americas is the triangular slave trade. Raleigh is a contemporary of John Hawkins, and who is a slave trader. He's also a contemporary of Sir Francis Drake, who sails slave ships. So within that context, that's where it sits. And I hope that's helpful.
Yes,
I think that's important to distinguish his part or not directly.
I don't think he necessarily would have disapproved of it.
There we go. Okay. So the other question I wanted to ask before we probably wrap up, because we're an hour and a half already, is with him writing the history of the world and his poetry, how come he's not better known as a writer? What do you think?
Well, I mean, people tend to point out that the history of the world, for example, is
rubbish.
It's described as being a literary masterpiece rather than historical one.
Okay, but still,
which, considering it's the history of the world, the fact that it's not considered to be a historical masterpiece but a literary one.
If it had chosen a title, a different title, perhaps.
Maybe. His poetry is to my mind not great.
Right.
I think
it's an acquired taste.
The text that he's involved with, that he's involved with lots of famous texts, like like Spenser's Fairy Queen, for example. I wonder if he's a better patron than creator.
Right.
I wonder.
He liked the idea of it, but perhaps wasn't the one with the talent. Effort.
Also, I think you kind of get sort of, there's something more romantic, or there certainly has been something more romantic, rather than the swashbuckling privateer. We like to paint our historical figures as one thing, and I think that the tortured artist versus the swashbuckling privateer are different things. and they're
Tortured
too
artist,
different.
I like
And we like swashbuckling privateer more than we like
yeah,
tortured artist.
butchered artist.
We like tobacco smoking, pipe smoking, potato growing, privateer,
Picture
swashbuckling runaway.
creating.
Yeah, thin shirted.
Yeah,
A very thin shirted,
we
obviously.
want him, you know, diving into the sea and coming out all soggy. We don't want him
Oh.
quill in hand.
Oh,
being a tortured artist.
Thinking Darcy, yeah.
We can even,
Yeah,
we can
get
even,
that
and the thing is, we can incorporate the alchemy and the kind of chemistry and the medicine side of it, because that's sort of like mad scientist, and that almost goes with. So we're like, mad scientist, you know, swashbuckler. He's just a bit kind of edgy.
I mean, to
and
go on those ships, then you had to be a little bit. Like, I mean, this is not pleasant. You're gonna get ill. You're going to run out of food. You're going to get really
you're
hot.
going to
get
be
really
die by
cold.
shitting yourself to death at least
You-
once.
Yeah.
At least once. You're going to almost die by shitting yourself to
okay,
death.
so the money's good, but the chicks love it.
The money's only good if you get to like get into enough scraps, mate. Like you've got to
Yeah,
fight.
you've got to fight for it.
I know, but if you've got
Mm.
no other job prospects,
There's a lot of things I would do before I start shitting through a tea bag, and he did have other job prospects. He was a favourite at court.
Elizabeth
would
wanted
he
him
have
to
been a
stay
favourite
at
at
court
court
at
if
one
he
point.
Yeah.
was
She wouldn't
like,
let him go.
Yeah,
She wanted him around. He wanted
like,
to
"No,
go. I think
please,
you've got to be a little
please."
bit,
let me get scurvy. Sign me up.
tapped.
Sign me
Yeah.
up for some dysentery. I beg of you, please.
"Yeah, people do weird shit. What can I say?"
Yeah.
It's weird. And the thing is, when we talk about like the success or otherwise of his voyages, the fact that more often than not his ships came home, whether or not the colonies survived, whether or not they found the things they were looking to find, the fact that people left
And came
fucking
back.
sailed off into the horizon with like no modern satellite navigation systems, just like no sat nav,
Stars.
just like a map that some other
like
fucker
Moana.
drew, being like, oh, by the way, I went there once. This is what the coastline looks like. Crack on. Here's an astrolabe. Off you fucking pop. The fact that anybody comes back from that is
Yeah.
a success. The fact that
Yeah.
anybody fucking survives is a success.
Mm.
Yeah, to be fair, that's a very good point.
Yeah. Brave, dumb, or
Stephen King
stupid.
says
I don't know.
that they've sung a few of Raleigh's poems to music. Maybe set to music, they're better than when you read them.
We'll find out now.
I mean, that one about Cynthia, I was like, that was a poem. There we go. There we are.
Did you like
Right.
my poem? No.
I'm getting tired.
I know.
Right.
and I've got a long day tomorrow. I'm off to that London.
Oh,
My
What are we
daughter's
doing?
GCSE results come in tomorrow morning.
Oh,
so,
God, yeah, of course. Oh,
Yeah.
how
egads.
A
Yeah.
couple of my friends' daughters got their their A level results last week, and they're off to their first choices of university.
That's very good.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
We've got a
Anybody
birthday. We've had a baby in the family. We've got a birthday tomorrow, results tomorrow, a wedding on Saturday, and my birthday next week. So it's all go here.
It's
Bloody hell, it's all kicking off.
going on.
It's all
It's all
going on.
kicking off.
Going on.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
our little babies, though, we love the little babies.
I went round and picked up all my newborn stuff from Gabriel that we've had in storage. So I've been doing laundry. I tell you, I wasn't expecting it, but I washed all of Gabriel's newborn clothes for the new baby, and it was so weird. It made me cry. What is
Aw.
that? What is that?
Oh,
I
I
was
don't know,
like,
it's been a
I'm
mom.
inconsolable. When I hold his
Mother-
baby clothes, I'm inconsolable. And I'm like, why am I crying? I don't even know why I'm crying. I'm a
No,
mess,
But
ladies.
you wait till you have to try and get rid of some of that stuff. I had to do it like I've still got stuff. You have to do it a little bit at a time because it just emotionally breaks you.
I always keep just a bit, or I did when they were.
I know,
the
I know. I mean, I've got bits and
Yeah.
bits. There are still some stuff that, like, you know.
Yeah, I never got upset about having to throw away or give away 10 white sleep grows or whatever.
No. I've
So,
kept Gabriel's first birthday outfit.
No, you can't give everything. Yeah.
Gabriel's first birthday outfit. the outfit he came home from the hospital in. I kept that's separate.
Yeah,
It was
yeah,
just- it was washed-
exactly.
And well, the weird thing was, it was washing clothes that he never got to wear, like because he grew out before he got into. Because when you have a newborn, everyone buys you 85 million fucking baby grows, but your kid's born in September, so they're just in a nappy the entire time because it's roasting hot. So there's just clothes that he just grew out of before he even put them on. So I am crying over things he never fucking wore.
Well, maybe because they grow so fast, it reminded you of that. I don't know.
Yeah.
Stuart says, I'm going to have trouble avoiding alcohol with all that going on. Well, it's going to be a great opportunity for some experimentation. Yep. And I will take that opportunity.
Yes. Compile with the evidence and let us know how it goes.
Love it.
But it does mean that
I'm
not here next week. I'm not sure
what's happening next week.
I'm certainly not here, but
Catherine and I will have a confab, but I'm going to be honest. I'm going to be honest, friends. I am excessively pregnant.
Not just a bit pregnant.
No, I am. We are less than a month, less than 4 weeks away from this baby coming out of me.
She can't wait.
I cannot wait. My torso is too small to contain a human anymore. I've had enough. So, and day by day, it gets more uncomfortable. So, I'm currently sat like this because if I sit fully on my bum, my pelvis makes me want to jump out of a window. So this is how I'm living right now, friends. So we'll see how I feel by next Wednesday, and we'll let you know. We'll put a post up on our tab.
I may also have some more blast from the past because people seem to quite like them. I'll have a look.
Do that maybe. Yeah. And then the week after, all being well, we will be here with Shakespeare.
Yes. And then the week after that, I won't be.
That will definitely not be.
Because I will have just had a baby.
We will think of
that shows how close it is.
We can get some people in to have some chats and things like that. Oh, his babies are very excited.
He's just putting his foot. He's sticking his foot out of me.
Yeah.
So, with that being said, we'll let you make sure you're following us on our platforms because we'll tell you what's happening next week. We'll let you know, and going forward as well. Do keep up with what we're happening because as I have a newborn coming, we'll see what happens. I can't promise anything, but I'm going to do my best. If you like what you see, you can help us out by coming to www.buymeacoffee.com/had podcast. That you can buy Winnebagos there, so we can torment Catherine. You can also join our close friends, which is over on the Instagram. It's a place where Catherine finds whatever depraved historical memes, usually about beavers as well. There's a lot of beaver chat. I'm not going to lie. Catherine loves a beaver, and she puts them up on a close friends. So it's always a place to come. You can check out our merch. You've already seen our Timmy's a Problem merch. They've got History After Dark on their tits. There we go, looking delightful. What have you got there? Is that your rough beaver?
I've got my beaver.
Check out Catherine's rough beaver as well. We've got No Feet for Free on the internet merch. See what you like. You pay your money and you take your choice. Anything else? Any more for any more? Make sure you have subscribed to the channel, that you have
this video.
Like this video, that you have hit the bell icon next to the subscribe button and then select all in the drop down that will pop up. That should let you know when YouTube, if it chooses to, when we are next going live. So please, it should alert you. It may, who knows? It sometimes wants to, it sometimes doesn't. If you do like this, tell your pals, share it. I mean, you're here, so I know that you have at least one disgusting friend, because otherwise you wouldn't have lasted so long. You've got at least one pervert in your environment, and as long as they're the right kind of pervert, send them our way. You know,
well behaved week actually.
I said fuck a lot.
I was thinking maybe because we were still over, after last week. It's just still unpicking the joy of last week.
I think we just don't notice as much anymore.
I think it's the third of the options. I think the bar is in hell. I think that's what's happened. The bar is in hell.
You can't limbo that baby now.
No. Any more for any more? Is that it, or shall I count us out?
I think we're good. Let's count out.
All right, pals. Have a lovely rest of your Wednesday, a lovely rest of your week. Be good. If you can't be good, be careful. If you can't be careful, don't get caught. We're leaving in 3, 2, 1. Bye.